you go in with a poll taken by 4 million users and you throw it down in front of everybody and say, look, everybody wants this, well, that's a lot more convincing. And that's exactly what Elon Musk did. And if I'm right about going into board meetings with evidence and proposing changes, this indicates that Elon Musk intends to make Twitter a free speech platform. Fantastic. Will Elon Musk fix Twitter?
Mr. Reagan.
So the night before last, I'm sitting here writing scripts for my show, and Valeria walks in talking about a problem she's having with work. She's going on and on, real intense, and my wife rarely gets this worked up about anything, so I know that it's something that really annoys her, and so I am listening intently, as a good husband must do. But then my phone, sitting in front of me here, buzzes, and I glance down just for a moment, and I see Elon Musk buys 9.2% stake in Twitter, making him the largest shareholder. Instantly, my face turned. My ears went back, my eyes grew wide. It was a look of shock. Valeria stopped talking. Now, making somebody stop speaking because of a look does not happen every day, but it happened in that moment. That is how powerful this news was. I was genuinely happier about reading that news than any news I've ever read since I watched the 2016 election. That was how profound this moment was to me. And I will explain through this video exactly why. Now, in hindsight, I should have suspected this. I was one of the 2,035,924 people who voted in Elon Musk's Twitter poll last week, in which he stated free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. And he asks, do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle? Needless to say, nobody thinks that they do. He then followed this up by saying the consequences of this poll will be important. Curious. He then followed this up by saying, given that Twitter serves as the de facto public town square, failing to adhere to free speech principles fundamentally undermines democracy. What should be done? I love that, actually. I love that he wrote that. Now, in the moment, I thought, what, is Elon Musk going to buy Twitter? I actually thought that, but I dismissed it. I dismissed that thought with another thought that went something like this. I wish. It just seemed too good to be true. A prospect so advantageous to myself and millions of other persecuted conservatives that it just didn't seem possible. Now, in hindsight, I think I actually kind of misread these tweets, and I think everybody else did too. But thinking about it now, I believe that I know why he was asking people these questions and making these polls. And I'll explain that a little bit later in the video. But anyway, despite my dismissive, too good to be true expectations, it is true. Elon Musk has done it. I mean, he didn't actually buy Twitter, but Elon Musk is now the #1 shareholder of Twitter. So how much control over the company does that give Elon Musk? Well, Twitter ownership is divided up purely by common stock. That means that whoever has the most shares has the most power. That said, Elon Musk can't just start making arbitrary changes to the company. Rather, he's been given a board seat. How much power does this board seat give him? Well, the answer to that might actually surprise you. That in one moment, first I have to sell you something. So how is 2022 going for you so far? Good, I hope. It's been tough for many Americans. Many of us have woken up and smelled the roses. Some of us have smelled the coffee, and some of us have smelled a more pungent aroma. Okay, this metaphor is getting out of hand, but the point is that we have all realized how quickly time is rushing past. We're that much closer to retirement, and that much closer to not earning. But in the meantime, you've got some catching up to do. With crypto and the markets so risky right now and inflation running over 8%, what are you going to do with your money to keep up and to beat all of this? Well, you might want to talk to an expert over at Noble Gold and run through some of your options for keeping your money safe. No pressure, no hassle, no call centers. You just speak to somebody who knows what they're talking about for once. This month, Noble Gold is giving away a free 1/10 ounce solid gold American Eagle coin with every qualifying plan that you start. Call 877-646-5347 or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. So how much power does this board seat give Elon Musk? Technically, not much. There are 12 total board members, and Elon Musk has just one vote. Now, next month, Jack Dorsey is stepping down for the board, so that will give Elon Musk 1 of 11 votes, but it's still not great. Any major changes that Musk wants to make to the company has to be voted on by the board. And so Musk can propose ideas, but he will always need the support of other board members. But here's the thing. Elon Musk knows how to leverage people. He knows how to use his celebrity, his money, his intellect to influence people to his way of thinking. Now, happy customers are good for business. And Elon Musk has a big enough following on Twitter to actually accumulate valid user data on his own. And this, I now realize, is why he was polling people before buying his shares in Twitter. He wasn't asking these questions because he was considering buying shares in Twitter. He was asking these questions because he knew he was going to buy these shares. And he already knew he was going to do this, and he needed ammunition going in. He needed ammunition because he was going to go in and try to convince the other board members to follow his lead. Now, if you go into a board meeting with, I think that Twitter's want an edit button. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think they'd like that. Now, maybe you could convince some of the board members of this. Maybe not. But if you go in with a poll taken by 4 million users and you throw it down in front of everybody and say, look, everybody wants this, well, that's a lot more convincing. And that's exactly what Elon Musk did. He took this poll in which he misspelled yes and no for some reason. But anyway, he's got the data. 4.4 million users responded and a whopping 73.6% want a dang edit button. I mean, it's something that users have wanted forever, and it looks like they're finally going to get it. But consider the other poll he posted. Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle? Over 2 million people responded, and 70% say no. This is compelling. And if I'm right about going into board meetings with evidence and proposing changes, this indicates that Elon Musk intends to make Twitter a free speech platform. Fantastic. Now, a lot of people have been writing Elon Musk on his Twitter account suggesting changes to Twitter. Can you reinstate Trump? Can you reinstate the Babylon Bee? Stuff like that. I wrote, can you find all of Twitter's blacklists and shadow banning techniques and expose them to the world? Now, I can't seem to find my comment on Twitter anymore, so perhaps the Twitter gatekeepers disappeared it. I don't know. But if I were to meet up with Elon, let me give you my list, my top suggestions for changes to Twitter. Number 1, reinstate Trump, obviously. Now, this is an immediate and clear sign of the new commitment to free speech. Number 2, fire Parag Agrawal. That guy's got the worst name ever. Parag Agrawal is the new CEO of Twitter after Jack Dorsey stepped down. I don't know if you guys know that, but that's true. So when Parag Agrawal took over as CEO of Twitter, Elon Musk posted this meme showing Jack Dorsey jumping ship and leaving Parag Agrawal standing there, his head photoshopped onto Joseph Stalin's body. He's characterizing Agrawal as Stalin. Elon Musk knows that Agrawal is an authoritarian dictator. In fact, after his ascension to CEO, Agrawal gave this interview in which he flat out states that he has zero interest in free speech, but rather intends to promote leftist ideas.
You're trying to combat disinformation. You also want to protect free speech. How do you balance those two?
Our role is not to be bound by the First Amendment, but our role is to serve a healthy public conversation. And our moves are reflective of things that we believe lead to a healthier public conversation. To focus less on thinking about free speech, but thinking about how the times have changed. Where our role is particularly emphasized is who can be heard.
And this guy is such a little bitch yes man. Elon Musk clearly thinks that he's awful. And yet this is what he tweets. I'm excited to share that we're appointing Elon Musk to our board! ! Really? Are you really excited? Because I don't think you are. That's an obvious lie. But anyway, let's continue. Through conversations with Elon in recent weeks, it became clear to us that he would bring great value to our board. Now that, I agree with. He's also both a passionate believer and an intense critic of our service, which is exactly what we need on Twitter to make us stronger in the long run. Welcome, Elon. What a piece of crap. Agrawal is aggravating. This is the kind of guy that you hire if you really like bootlickers, if you like ass kissers, if you want people to basically just agree with everything that you say all the time. I mean, I'm not the CEO of a major corporation, but let me just say, I will never hire somebody like this. And he's happy that a strong critic is joining the board? Bullshit. Oh, you called me Stalin and basically said that our company is the enemy of democracy? I love that criticism. I'm so happy you're going to be my boss now. No, you're not happy, Agrawal. You are very not happy, and you're just lying. My guess is that you've been crying yourself to sleep the past few nights because you know you're about to get fired. And I darn well hope that you do. Number 3, fire Vijaya Gadde. This chick is the, quote, legal policy and trust lead at Twitter. The truth is, she is the censorship czar. She leads the team that suspends conservatives and bans them from the platform, including Donald Trump. Now, I'm not going to go into too much depth criticizing this woman, as I produced 3 full videos breaking down her appearance on Joe Rogan and exposing her as a total fraud. Feel free to watch those if you want to know how unbelievably corrupt Twitter actually is. But beyond firing this chick, I think her entire department needs to be inverted. That is, instead of having them identify people to suspend and or ban, they should be instructed to go back through all of their previous bans and reinstate every conservative. And that brings me to my next point. Reinstate all conservatives banned from Twitter. Now, what I'd really like to see them do is rewrite the community guidelines. Let's call that number 5. Now, this may actually serve as a guide to appropriate reinstatement. For instance, if you were banned for essentially being a conservative, that needs to be remedied. But if you posted kiddie porn, yeah, maybe you should stay banned. Now, the next point I've already made, but it's my favorite point and probably the most important to me, so I'll make it again. Elon Musk should find and expose all Twitter blacklists and all shadow banning algorithms, techniques, and methods. It's not enough that these things are changed within the company. We need these things exposed, because it's not just Twitter that does this. It's YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram too. We need these practices exposed so that they stop across all platforms. Number 7, after Elon Musk does all of this, I think he should declare victory, and then, before they even start, he should tell the White House, the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA to F right off. And finally, and this is the most important thing, Twitter needs to get me a dang blue check. Why? Why, Twitter? Why no blue check? I'm a big deal. Okay. Seriously though, having a blue check is actually extremely valuable. People don't know this, but if you have a blue check, you can click a little button and filter out all the responses to your posts and just read the responses by blue check. So if you've got a blue check, like if I've got a blue check, then all the other blue checks will always see my responses. And that's really useful. And if you don't get that, you're kind of excluded from a lot of the conversations. It's really annoying. And guess who gets excluded all the time? Guess who doesn't get blue checks even though they should? Conservatives. But I digress. Look, I do have one concern about Elon Musk jumping in here, and it struck me basically the moment that I read this news. We have established that Elon Musk probably knows how to push the company in a positive free speech direction. The question is, will he be allowed to make these changes? You see, I've never been convinced that Jack Dorsey had full control over his own company, and I'm not sure that the current CEO, Parag Agrawal, has full control now. I've always suspected that there's been a lot of interference from the outside. Maybe the FBI, maybe the NSA, maybe the DNC, certainly the White House. They admitted that with regard to Facebook. So if factions within the federal government and the Democrat Party are controlling Twitter policies, Elon Musk might find changing these things at Twitter a lot more difficult. As he only owns 9% of the company and has just one board seat, I imagine that those external forces controlling Twitter, if they do in fact exist, will probably just go around Elon Musk. I doubt they'll approach him directly. But this kind of interference could prove difficult to counter. I hope that Elon Musk can find a way to do it, but you know what? He is a brilliant guy, and I am an eternal optimist. So I think that he will. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the recent purge of conservatives on Twitter. A lot of people noticed this, that as soon as the news came out that Elon Musk bought all those Twitter stocks, as soon as that happened, a lot of people noticed that they were suddenly losing Twitter followers. And this happens all the time with conservatives, like maybe once every 2 months or something. Suddenly we just get this purge and we lose a bunch of followers. I personally, in 2 days, I lost 1,000 followers on Twitter. How does that happen? Obviously, within the company, there is a reaction to Elon Musk buying the company. And what's really funny is that there's a lot of people on Twitter saying, you know, now that Elon Musk has bought all these shares in Twitter and he has this power and this control over Twitter, he's going to turn Twitter into something that I don't like, so I'm going to stop using it. I'm just like, go for it, lady. Like, we do not need these leftist activists, you know, constantly screaming and yelling. I mean, it is funny. It's good for my show and stuff, but I mean, watching leftists be all sad because Elon Musk bought shares in Twitter, I'm loving it. It's fantastic. Finally, I'd like to address the only problem with Elon Musk's move here. It doesn't fix everything. Sure, he can fix Twitter, but this doesn't fix YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. We're still going to have to deal with the abuse of conservatives on all these other platforms. Fixing Twitter just won't fix that. But maybe it will. I do have a tiny bit of hope. Plot twist. And fixing these other programs is critical because, you see, I don't actually think that Twitter as a platform shifts the culture that much. Twitter more so reflects the culture. YouTube, on the other hand, actually influences the culture a lot. And so YouTube is a much more important platform for free speech. Fixing YouTube is far more critical. And look, I don't just think that because I would benefit personally, although I certainly would. But if shadow banning and censorship of conservatives was no longer a thing on YouTube, the entire country would benefit. We need to hear a diverse spectrum of perspectives, not just what leftists or the chosen few conservatives have to say. Now, look, I don't have that much hope that Elon Musk's buy into Twitter will have that much of an effect on YouTube, but, maybe it will. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter have always seemed to censor and shadow ban the same people. There's always been this kind of messed up agreement between the three companies about who to go after and how to go after them. The growth of both my YouTube channel and Twitter pages were essentially capped in 2019, and my Facebook page was demonetized entirely. Now, I don't know why they care about my little channel so much, but you piss off one crazy leftist with too much time on their hands, and they make a career out of ruining your life. These people are nuts. Now, there is some danger for these companies if they suspend or demonetize high-profile accounts because there tends to be public backlash. But these companies know that they can target smaller channels like mine without any consequence at all. And so I suspect that the smaller YouTube channels are actually treated more severely than Ben Shapiro or Tim Pool, people like that. They're going to keep the biggest channels happy, along with the conservatives watching them, and just censor all the smaller channels, and they're going to keep us from growing. Now, some smaller channels have grown bigger. They fly under the radar. That's really good for them. I was not so lucky. In any case, I do think that Twitter could pressure YouTube to let up just a little bit by reversing course itself. As I said, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube seem to have always synchronized their conservative targets, as well as the methods by which they've targeted us. And just like any delusional leftist in a group of delusional leftists, I think this collaboration helps them justify what they're doing. If three leftists are standing around chatting, reinforcing each other's crazy leftist ideas, there's little chance that any of them will ever change their mind. But if one of them suddenly says, you know what, actually, I don't agree with any of this, and walks away, well, now the other two can only reinforce their craziness between the two of them. And although that certainly can be effective, it is less so. And there's always a chance that one of them is now going to say, our friend that walked away might be right. And so the whole thing can get really lonely real quick. And instead of reinforcing their crazy ideas, believing their own BS, they no longer feel so superior. They no longer feel so cool. And maybe, just maybe, they'll pivot. Probably not, but maybe. But what gives me more hope is the suggestion that I made about exposing the blacklists and the shadow banning algorithms and techniques. If these things get exposed to the world, it's possible that YouTube and Facebook will be publicly pressured against using them. I mean, it's still not likely, but it is possible. And exposing this stuff with hard evidence would also pressure the federal government to amend Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which grants social media companies the liability protections of a town square, despite them curating content as would a publisher. This has given them immense power, and power that they have abused. Social media has weaponized information and communication in America. They've weaponized these things against conservatives and in favor of Democrat politicians. And this has severely corrupted our democratic process. So, in short, I think this news about Elon Musk is awesome. I think he's in a position to do great things with Twitter. I think he plans to do great things with Twitter. And I don't think that he can back down now because he's set our expectations very high. Elon Musk has endeared millions to him, and all these fans have now come to believe that he's taken over Twitter in order to turn it into a free speech platform. If he were to fail in this endeavor or somehow turn away from it, I think his fans would instantaneously turn against him. I'm not saying that they should, I'm just saying that this is the harsh reality. But I think he knew that going in. And I think that he decided to climb that mountain and slay that dragon anyway. And so you know what? I think that's exactly what he's going to do. Well, that's it for me. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
Someone very profoundly once said that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. Fascism is private ownership, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says, less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.